How are you? Welcome tonight. This project has been put together by Joe Mora, which you're going to hear from here shortly. It's been a project we've been working on for about 90 days, believe it or not. So we pulled this together. We have a panel here from Hutchinson and the Wichita area that are going to answer several questions, and hopefully you learn something from this experience. These folks that are putting themselves out there, it's tough to do that. So we hope that you do learn some things tonight. So I'll be moderating this and be asking the panel questions. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Joe Mora, and she can tell you a little bit more about the project.
Hello, I'm Joe. I don't know a whole lot of you in this room, so I'm very glad to see you and meet you, and I want to thank you for coming. I hope that there are some here who will take something away from this today. I did do this as a school project, as John stated, but I kind of started a dream about 2 years ago where I would create these large discussions on various diversity issues, and then those issues would be recorded and then shown as a movie type thing, and that didn't quite work out for us in the short amount of time that we had, so we're doing the panel, which was genius on the part of the people who were on the board. I would like to introduce them right now, if that's okay. We of course have John Powell, and then back here we have Lucas Salto. He's with PFLAG, and Ms. Fennenstill. Do you have an affiliation?
I hang out with PFLAG.
She hangs out with PFLAG. Ashton Fennenstill. We have Julia Johnson, who is with the, let me get this right, Hutchinson Area Equality Coalition. Gotcha. And Janelle.
I don't have an affiliation.
Janelle hangs out with everybody. Okay. So these people helped me with this project, and I'm very, very proud of them. They all did a whole lot of work. There were some very stressful times, and they got me through them. That may be a red beer, but you know. So I just want to say thank you to them for being here today. I want to tell you just a little bit about the program. I'm not going to read you my entire believe me, it's not a thesis statement. This is not a master's program. So, but I'm going to read you a little bit about it. The Everything There Is to Know About Educational program began as a short paragraph assignment focused on ways to educate others concerning cultures that we do not understand. All too often, we think we already know everything there is to know, and we have questions, but we believe it is rude to ask them. However, most people know when someone is really trying to understand them better. The title, Everything There Is to Know, is in truth a misnomer. It is designed to make the participant believe they can come to know everything there is to know about the subject at hand. Once the project is completed, the only thing proven is that everyone is an individual. Everyone wants to be treated with compassion. It takes no compromise to give people their rights. It takes no money to respect the individual. It takes no political deal to give people freedom. It takes no survey to remove repression. That is Harvey Milk. The vision statement of this program: in a perfect world there will be love and no loneliness. Love will extend to all people, from all people, and loneliness will melt away. This program will address the issues facing the LGBTQ+ community with their hometowns and rural Bible Belt communities. An educational program, it will influence those who judge others on stereotypes rather than their contributions to society. Support of others and merit of being a human person, equal in every way. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today, and we have about 85-ish questions that we're going to have moderated by John. I might chip in every once in a while. If you would wait until we are done and you have your questions at that point in time, go ahead and ask them. I ask that when you do, you project loudly. We have one camera here, has one microphone, and I would ask that the panel also projects rather well. Did you catch all that? Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay, real quick, one last thing. If you'd please make sure your cell phones were turned off or muted, that would be fantastic. All right, I'm going to ask the panel if they introduce themselves. We'll start with my friend Glenn. Glenn, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you identify?
And how much do you want to know?
Just a brief explanation. We'll get to more later.
I'm Glenn Owen. I have lived in the community for 11 years. I worked for USD 308, and I've been an educator for 40 years. I adopted 2 boys out of foster care. The foster care agency also knew that I was gay. And I have raised and is continuing to raise an adult one. That's it.
Thank you. Lorette?
Lorette Moore from Hutchinson, Kansas, transgender female.
Thank you. Toby?
Toby, gonna be 27 next week, and I identify as a transgender male.
Thanks, Toby. Evan?
My name is Evan Shaheen. There's a myriad of things that I've done. I have been an activist out in this community in the Wichita area and all over the state of Kansas for the past 13 years. I am a former Wichita Pride president, former president for the Wichita Transgender and Community Network. I currently sit on Wichita's Equality Kansas board. And I am a promoter for the All-American Goddess pageantry system. I've gotten into that because drag and the drag community is probably one of the biggest communities that give back to the LGBTQ plus community, and with that starting an initiative to begin to build a database statewide of clinics where people can go when they come here, when they need information, when they need something that, where's the friendly things to do, where's the friendly things to go, where can they get help? Because at All American Goddess we believe that everybody should have access to this information, and it's time that somebody do this in the state of Kansas because, you know, in Wichita and Hutch, you probably know where it is, but western Kansas, the smaller areas, we just don't know. So that's what we're accomplishing.
And how do you identify?
He, him.
Thank you, Evan. Julia?
My name is Julia Johnson. I'm the ex-president of the local chapter, Reno County chapter at KEC. I sat on the board of PFLAG. I've been an activist for 10 years. I have been married to my partner for legally 2 years. We've been together 18 years. We have 6 children of our own, and we have fostered 5. Of that 5, we have had a gender fluid. One of our daughters is gay, currently engaged to be married. My goal is to bring equality across the board, literally. My voice will not be silenced until that happens. So I work with WITCON currently, and we are bringing forth with our organization, Hutchinson Area Equality Coalition, the first ever Pride here in Hutchinson, Kansas. It will be happening in 2018.
Thank you, Julia. Connor?
Hi, my name is Connor, and I identify as a gay male.
Thank you, Connor.
Christopher Britton. Basically retired estate sale liquidator here in Hutchinson. Married to my spouse for the last 4 years legally, 28 years actually together. Involved in a lot of different various organizations in town and support a lot of different groups, and I guess I identify as a Christian gay male.
Thank you, Christopher. Allie?
Hi, my name is Allie Pooler. I'm a sophomore at the college here, and I identify as a pansexual female.
Thank you, Allie. Janelle, sorry.
It's okay. My name is Janelle Voth, and I identify as a lesbian female. I'm also her mother.
Fantastic. Brenda, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Brenda Way. I'm the founder of Wichita Transgender and Community Network, also known as WITCON. I started my transition September 7th, 2014. Lived the first 4 months of my transition under a bridge. My spouse, when I came out to her, threw me out of our home. And that opened up my eyes to a great need in Wichita, that there was no help for trans people, that there was no community of trans people. There was a support group that was barely hanging on by a thread. You're lucky if you see 3-4 people there. I wanted to change that. I wanted to make it a little bit easier for transgender people in Wichita. I had the opportunity to start a project at the center of Wichita, which is where they have the local chapter of Equality Kansas, and they also have a lot of different groups and activities at the center. It's an LGBTQIA center, and we became a project there. We started off basically with support groups, social groups, and we built up a community where we've had up to 45 people just at one meeting. We've had over 180 different people walk through our doors. We are all inclusive. It is not just for trans people. We welcome everybody to come to our support groups and our social activities, because if you want to learn about transgender people, the best place to learn that is from transgender people. So we allow allies in our door also, and to sit and learn with us, talk with us, share their ideas, their feelings, dine with us, party with us, whatever we have going. Allies are always welcome. I identify as a transgender lesbian woman that was born intersex, and I lost my gold star. I'm dating a guy. But what WICON does is...
If you don't, we'll get to that.
You want to get to that
Yeah,
later?
we'll get to that.
Awesome.
But I want to talk about the questions that we're going to ask you. We have around 80 questions that the panelists have not seen. These questions were submitted to the group that put this project together. The panelists, again, haven't seen the questions, so they don't know what we're going to ask them. And if there's a question that is too personal, you don't have to answer it. You can just say, I'd rather not answer that question. Okay?
If at any time you feel the need to leave the panel, please feel free.
Exactly. All right, so with that, let's start with the questions. Let's start with Glenn. At what age, Glenn, did you know that you were gay?
It was a long time ago. I knew when I was a senior in college, but I was a late bloomer, but I didn't get to be a senior until I was 27.
All right. Julia, when did you know you were lesbian?
I knew early on. However, I did not have the option to come out. I knew when I was in junior high. But by the time I hit high school, it was at the height of the AIDS epidemic, 84 to 88. I went to a very conservative high school, Bueller. It was not an option for me to come out at that time. I saw how they treated people that they even suspected were gay. And I come from a Roman Catholic family. So there was a lot going on. So that was something that I dealt with on my own, and albeit not well at times. So I knew, I would say, by 12.
Toby, when did you know that you were transgender?
For me, it was about 5 years back that I finally came to terms with it over a course of several years prior, struggling with it and what society would think of me, what I thought of myself. I come from my whole entire family is Mormon, and so just being a disappointment to them was a big fear of mine. And now that I am out, my family is extremely supportive, and I've got a great support group that helps me with that.
Fantastic. All right. Lorette, what about you? When did you know you were transgender?
March of 1999.
Okay. What happened that day?
I found the word transgender.
Okay. All right. And that's how you
Yeah.
felt?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't get called on and you really want to answer a question,
Yeah, just let me know. Let's see here. I'm trying to not go so much in order. Janelle, during your school years, were you out?
Not in high school. I was out in college and then went back in due to a lot of discrimination. I unfortunately went to school in Emporia, which was only 30-some miles from Westboro Baptist Church. And somehow they got a hold of my name. And somehow that meant I was ridiculed by them, basically. I had phone calls left on my phone. I had calls to my Dean of Student Teaching. I had my car spray painted. And so I went back into the closet because I couldn't handle it.
Connor, you're in high school, correct?
Yeah.
How is it being gay and in high school?
At first it was a little difficult, of course, because people are gonna say things that are really mean, but if you just, what I've learned is that if you just learn to not care, they don't mess with you. Like, they don't, so.
Have you been bullied at school?
In junior high, yeah. And especially before I came to terms with it, yeah. But now, not really.
Christopher, when did you know you were gay?
I think I knew when I was 5 or 6. I think some of the things I did as a child made me realize that I was different. Coming out, I would say I was probably 14 to my immediate family, you know. So I think my body was just telling me at a very young age I was different. So.
Did you ever suffer any discrimination?
Yeah, I think I suffered some going through grade school and even high school. But I also suffered it with my biological family. I basically had 2 families. I had a foster family several times during my life. So, and eventually was adopted out by my foster family, by them. So I don't have the same name I had when I was born. So, but I don't think it was enough bullying by anybody to create a hatred or anything against society. I think I had a faith that kept me going in almost anything. So.
is there anyone on the panel who knew while they were in school and had to hide it? Would somebody speak to that?
Like Christopher, I was adopted. My mother is Roman Catholic. My father, who adopted me, is Lutheran. He's also German. When I say I came from a bigoted family, it's things they make movies about. The word faggot, the word nigger, chink, any kind of racial slur that you can imagine for someone different was used on a daily basis. The only saving grace I had was that I was a white girl. The abuse that was heaped on people that were different in my household, not by my mother, but by my adopted father, was horrendous, and his whole family partook in this. And I was right, because the day I came out and he found out, he disowned me. In fact, the entire family did. I speak with my mother and one cousin out of the entire family, and no one else will speak to me.
So what were your emotions growing up, knowing that if you came out, what it could mean for you?
Well, I was suicidal on more than one occasion. Knowing that you are a complete failure and being raised strict Catholic, there was a constant fight within myself to be perfect. So I had good grades. In fact, I was a 4.0, and I wanted to be the perfect child because I figured if I could be perfect, that if that one thing about me was different, it would be overlooked, that somehow it would be accepted. And I think a lot of people go through that. And you strive to be just kind of under the radar. And there were times that emotionally it was absolutely crippling.
Is there anyone else on the panel who can echo that?
You know, I mean, I didn't go through that personally, but in the 13 years that I've been doing this, whether it be with Equality Kansas, Pride, or what have you, you hear a lot of those stories walk through the door. And every time it's, I wish I could have been perfect, I wish I could have done this, that, or the other thing, and my parents would have overlooked it. And I always tell them, it's like, honey, you weren't a failure, you weren't broken, your family failed you. Because when you think of parents, they're supposed to give you unconditional love and acceptance regardless of how you turn out. And unfortunately, this world is imperfect. And it happens more often than people think. A lot of times we don't like to talk about it because it's not politics, it's not fighting for the equal rights or whatever, so it's kind of brushed to the side. But it's a horrible thing to see. But like I said, you tell them you're not broken, you're perfect the way you are, your family just failed.
Can I add something?
Sure.
You had asked Christopher about discrimination. I want to give everybody an idea what it's like to be discriminated as a trans person. My own family discriminated against me, like Evan said, didn't accept me. So I am not allowed to speak to my father, my sister, any of my uncles, aunts, cousins. My whole family abandoned me. My spouse of 13 years abandoned me. I lived under a bridge for 4 months because no apartment complex would let me move in because I was using one name, but my ID still had my old name. Because I was wearing a skirt, but I hadn't figured out how to do the makeup. My hair wasn't long yet. When I came out, I went on a 3-day crash course just trying to figure out how to walk out the door dressed as I felt comfortable but yet look presentable enough that I didn't feel like every door I went in, somebody wanted to kill me. I have been almost arrested in the Dillons for using a women's restroom. I had a partner for a while. She was the co-founder of WitCon. Her and I were partners for a while, and we became homeless. And again, nobody would rent to us because you could do a background check, and they use your social security number. And even though I have all of my paperwork done now, my driver's license, everything has been switched over. When they do run a number on a social security, every single name that's ever been associated with that number, every AKA, comes up. So apartment complexes would charge us $50, $60 to do a background check, keep the money and tell us, well, 2 names came up and we just can't deal with that, whatever. There's discrimination against trans people in just about every venue we go in. Not every single time, but every single venue. Julia talked about suicide. Suicide rate for transgender people is 41%. 41% of trans people have tried to commit suicide. National average is around 4. So it's not just the people that haven't been able to come out, the people that are stuck in that closet. It's also people that have come out and they realize they've lost everything. They've lost their families, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their homes. People say, well, why would you make a choice to be you? It's not a choice. This is who I am. Do you think I would give up the white male privilege to be one of the lowest people on the totem pole? Nobody lower than us than a trans woman of color. I didn't give it up. It was taken from me when I came out as my authentic self.
Thank you, Brenda.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
While we're on this note of our family's acceptance of this, of acceptance of us, I came back out, let's see, we're talking, you're 19?
19.
So 14 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
14 years ago, and I told my immediate family, I told my kids, I told my mother, my stepdad. I didn't have contact with my biological dad, and that's another issue. And I knew, my grandmother knew. But she was in her 80s, and that's a different generation, and I thought, just out of respect, I'm not going to say anything to her. I mean, she knows, and I know she knows, but we're not going to talk about it. And I went to get married a year and a half ago. And through the course of events, she found out I was getting married. And I said, Grandma, I'm gonna get married. And she goes, well, I want to be there. I said, well, it may be uncomfortable. We're going to kiss. We're going to hold hands. There'll be other couples there. She goes, are you happy? I said, well, yeah, I'm happy. She goes, well, that's all I want. She came in that day, and my now sister-in-law saw her and said, oh, I'm so glad you made it. And she goes, I wouldn't have missed this for the world. My granddaughter's getting married. She's my biggest supporter, and she will be 90 years old in June.
You know, I often find that it's that older generation, it's the younger generation and then the older, like grandparents' age, that they really don't care.
They've softened a little bit.
Yeah, she does not care. She's like, I'm going.
I want to remind the panel to project.
Okay.
Toby, were you aware of any other LGBTQ persons in high school?
There was a small group of us, maybe 5 or so, when I was in high school back in '05. And we tried starting a GSA, had teacher backing and everything, and principal shot us down. You know, so we banded together and we, you know, did it on our own time.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to answer that?
I was a part of a GSA in my high school. So there was, most of them were straight people, but there are a few of us in there that did identify with the LGBTQ, and it was, being in there really helped like us in general be more comfortable in our own selves, and so.
And when you say there's straight people, you mean allies, right?
Yeah,
People
I'm sorry.
That's okay, no. that care about you
Yes.
and want to support you.
Yeah, they were there mostly because they knew people, and so they didn't want to like offend anybody else, so they wanted to be there to learn.
Fantastic. Let's see. Hey Glenn, I know you didn't come out till later on in life, and you're an educator, but you went to high school, you went to college, and more college. Did you ever have any teachers that would say something off the cuff about gay kids or anything like that? Did you ever experience that?
No, I never did.
Okay.
Never did.
Did anyone else on the panel ever experience a teacher that kind of made you go, oh man, maybe I...
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, the AIDS epidemic was coming out, and it was the talk of health class, and, well, you know, it's gay men's fault. That's what we were being taught between '84 and '88. The gay men were the reason for AIDS, and, you know, gay women. So anybody of that you know, that gender, it was all a choice, and it was all their fault, and, well, you know, drug addicts only had it because of the gays. Literally, we were being taught this in health class. So you never, ever wanted to come out.
I never had a teacher outright say that, but, and I know it's only a short time ago, but I came out in '03. And back in '03, 70% of the country was still very much against gay marriage, anything to do with it. And that same year is also the year that Massachusetts was the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. So you would have teachers in my high school and college make snide comments of, well, this is going to ruin the fabric of American society, what have you. They would never say it in the classroom, but you could tell with their demeanor kind of where they stood if something like this was brought up. And that's one of the reasons that I got involved with, back then it was called the Kansas Equality Coalition, now it's Equality Kansas, in politics. And that's one of the big things that I do, because the lack of education that came with even educators with this kind of thing was absolutely stunning to me, that somebody could be that willfully ignorant and not educate themselves on what's really going on.
For those of you who compensated by trying to be something you were not, what does that feel like?
Stressful.
Please speak to that, someone.
Not so much as like not being accepted by my family or anything like that, because obviously this is my mother. But I had a lot of like my peers that didn't understand me, and I knew who I was at a very young age. So, but I kept it a secret. So to make up for that in my friend groups, I would try to be the best person. I would try to be like the mother of the group per se. I would try to provide for them in any way I could to make them think better of me. And honestly, it was one of the most stressful things about that, because like I was pushing myself to my limits over and over and over and over again, trying to be better for them, even though they didn't know anything about me yet.
Who else can relate to overcompensating on the panel? Can you relate to that? I sure can. Go ahead, Brenda.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I grew up in a very religious family. My father was a minister. And I've always had kind of feminine mannerisms and stuff. Got beat up in school all the time. All the time. My father was very abusive towards me physically because I wasn't man enough for him. I didn't like hunting, fishing, football, that kind of stuff. So as I grew up, I started trying to compensate, trying to fit in that stereotype of what everybody else expected me to be. I dropped out of school to go into the Army, and I had to go hardcore, so I went airborne, and I went and became an airborne cook, basically. I was on the quartermasters. We were the ones that were supposed to jump, set up everything for our mass unit, and then go to our specific jobs. And I thought that would have been a good career, but then I started getting bullied even in the service. I got thrown out for homosexual activity because I was raped. Really, seriously. They threw me out for homosexual activity, and I was a victim of rape. That's how taboo LGBT people are back then, in the 80s. When I got out of service, because of always constantly hearing faggot, homosexual, queer, all those names that kids use to other kids who seem a little bit, I guess, sissified to them or feminine to them, it made me angry. I became a very angry, bitter person, very suicidal person, to the point where I became a gay basher. Because I hated them so much, because that's what was thrown at me and said, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay. And I questioned that all my life because I didn't know I could question my gender. Even though I knew I liked girls, I questioned that because that's all I heard. I got out of the service, I started riding motorcycles, I started hanging out with bad people, trying to actually take the pressure off of me so they wouldn't pick on me, and I would go with them to pick on other people.
So the abused became the abuser.
Excuse me?
The abused became the abuser.
Oh, yes, definitely, definitely.
It happens. It happens more than you would think.
Definitely.
Throw out some descriptive words for me. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we need to keep it moving along, and I'd love to hear more of your story.
Oh,
Definitely would. But throw out some descriptive words for me that say how you felt. Just words.
Felt about what?
About hiding how you really felt.
Fraud.
Fraud?
Like I said before, stressful to the max.
Okay. Any others?
Depressed.
Okay.
Scared.
Scared.
See, and I can't relate to some of this because, and I know people have been discriminated against and younger people have been by their families. I don't think I was ever afraid of being me around my family. That's all I ever could be. I am still the same me I was when I was 15, and people that have known me for many, many years will tell you I don't change from one day to the next.
Nope.
You know what I mean? I will say whatever comes out of my mouth. But I I didn't have I wasn't picked on in high school or grade school. I don't, if I was, they did it behind my back or whatever. I just didn't notice it because I guess my personality, and I'm the type that I don't let that type of stuff stop me from growing in life. And
Speaking of life,
I don't think I would be where I am today. I don't, even being considered prominent for being a gay person in Hutchinson and being involved in the community and working alongside with a lot of the rich and the prominent people here in Hutchinson, I have not had an issue with the general population of Hutchinson. I'm sure there's some out there that, but the only thing I've had a problem with is we did have a baker that refused to bake our wedding cake.
You sure did. You sure did.
But I feel very fortunate that and I'm sorry for those that have had issues and problems.
Do
But
you feel your Christian status has helped that or hindered that?
I think I've always had a deep belief in God. And
But has it helped you to build relationships in the community?
I don't know, because I think my personal faith is my own, and I've not let it control anything I do. I am just me. I will say and do whatever I'm thinking, and
do you go to church, Christopher?
yes, I'm a member of Grace Episcopal.
And how do they feel about you and your husband?
We have traded churches many times in the last few years, and I think we're at the best place we can possibly be. I don't think there's a more loving church here in Hutchinson. Now, I can't, when I say church, I'm talking about a denominational type place. I do know that the Unitarians are very accepting and loving, and as far as Hutchinson goes, I believe those are probably the only two places. If a gay person's looking for something spiritual, that's the only two places in Hutchinson I know of they're going to find it. Yes, there are some that say, we're welcome, we want your tithe every week, but we don't want you in the pulpit, we don't want you in the choir, we don't want you telling anybody, we just don't want you to be public about it or talk about it.
Toby, are you religious?
I grew up Mormon, but around the same age I came out as a lesbian. When I was 14 or so, I had stopped going to church and wasn't forced to or anything like that. So, I mean, it's just something that's kind of dropped into the background as I got older.
Evan, what about you?
Well, I grew up Eastern Orthodox, so that might be a term that's unfamiliar to some people, so let me explain what that is. Eastern Orthodoxy is actually the church that's the Catholic Church split from. When the Great Schism happened, it was Roman Catholic West, Eastern Orthodox. So they're a very old faith, and their philosophy on the LGBTQ plus community is we know it exists. They only preach the New Testament, so the Old Testament is never mentioned because Jesus came down and said this first book is not right. So it really varies from church to church because we don't really have a figurehead like the Pope that says this or that. It's an ecumenical council. And so for me, it was the church acknowledged that it was there, but they didn't say anything for or against it, which I guess you could say silence also speaks volumes. But it is slowly changing. The American church realizes that this is happening, as well as churches across Europe. Like I said, it's one of the oldest, and it's actually the second largest Christian religion in the world. So it's like the Catholic Church in the fact that it is saying that you're not going to go to hell because you're gay, but we're still not quite there yet. So it's very interesting to see kind of the dynamic shift from the old dogma to realizing that this is a modern world and that these are issues that they're going to have to face at some point.
Speaking of going to hell, has anyone on the panel ever been told that you're going to hell?
By my church or by others?
By anyone.
Yeah, by anyone?
Yeah.
So,
No? Glenn? No?
Many times.
My own mother has.
My whole family, and when I was, the very church I was baptized in, here in town, St. Teresa's, and my 4 older children were baptized in. When I came out in 1999, I was excommunicated, and my 3 older children were asked to leave the school. And I was told that if I repented and basically went back into the straight life, my father, and, and asked forgiveness that I could, see my way to heaven. But basically, I mean, anybody that's Catholic, you know what you're taught. And he looked me dead in the face and said, if you do this, you're going to go to hell. You will burn in the gates of hell. And he wasn't sorry. And I was asked to leave the church, and I was asked to take my children to a different school. My kids were uprooted from the school they had attended, and I was excommunicated that day from my church.
Connor?
No.
Good.
Christopher?
Yeah, there's been people through the years that said
I think
you're going to go to hell,
I mean,
but
we've all heard it.
I guess I need to intercede and say,
You'll meet
when
me.
I was
See you there.
15 and 16, I had a Church of God minister that saved me every day after school in church. And when I say saved, I mean, I'm just being honest. And he was very,
Lord have mercy, throwing somebody under a bus.
I'm not ashamed to, there's nothing
Right,
about
you're like
my
me.
life that I'm ashamed
Right.
to talk about. And I really think some of the comfort he gave me
Is somebody's
then
phone going off?
Somebody's phone.
really helped me get through life.
It
So,
made you who you are.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Jan?
I had done missionary work for a church, went to college, and finally admitted who I was to myself and what have you. And through some other people that were at the college, it got back to the pastor of the church I was attending. And he called me and my girlfriend in to his home and said, we'd rather you not come to the church if this is the choices you're going to make. And I said, okay, we'll see you.
I mean, you can let it define who you are,
Right.
or you can just stand up and hold your head high and let them stand in the place of God. The biggest argument I have, and I have to say this because my mother left the church the minute I said this, is when Father said that to me, I said, that the biggest argument is you don't put yourself in the place of God. And I'm not preaching religion at all. I'm just saying this was my comeback to him because he was taking the option away from my children to go to a private school that I was paying to send them to. So I looked at him and I said, okay, so you're telling me that I'm going to go to hell, and that's fine, and that's great. You have every right to say that. You can stand in judgment in God's place. But last I knew there was only one God, and you're playing judge, jury, and executioner. So I'll tell you what, you sit on that self-imposed pedestal and you take the word of God away from my children, which is exactly what you're doing, which goes against the very oath you took when you decided to run this church. And I walked away with my head held high, and that was the day I became a warrior. That was the day I decided, kind of like you, that what, I just really don't care what anybody thinks. I really don't. I'm a good mom, I'm a good person, and I think we all reach that point where we're just like, what, you can say whatever you want. Because it doesn't define us.
I think Brenda's raised her hand a couple times.
Sorry.
This past July, I was heading home. I used to drive a PT Cruiser that was just covered in equality stickers. Lesbian stickers, trans stickers, anything you can think of. It was covered in that. And I was on Taylor Road getting I was at the light getting onto Kellogg. And the light just turned red, so I'm stopped. And of course, I smoke cigarettes, so my window was down a little bit. And all of a sudden I hear, and it was this gray-haired, silver-haired old lady at my window. She was the person in the car behind me. And she just shook her finger out, "You are gonna go to hell, you are gonna go to hell, you're gonna burn in hell, God doesn't like gays and faggots and all that stuff." And I'm like, what if this had been somebody with a gun?
These are my
Scared
favorite.
the crap out of me.
You know,
But yeah, LGBT people get told this all the time.
well, and you know, I think, and I'm sure you empathize with this too, anytime, and we joke in Wichita about this because we always say there's 15 people that sit around this table that do everything in the community. And I
Hail
think
Mary,
when
Grace.
when you put yourself out there like that, I've been told I'm going to go to hell from the Westboro Baptist Church, from Hollenbeck, who was a pastor in Wichita, who used to go to every Pride Festival up until we started doing it at the Indian Center, waving his Bible around, telling everybody that they were going to go to hell. And when he figured out that he had to pay $5 to get in, now he doesn't do it anymore because God help him if he gives $5 to the faggots. But I mean, this happens. I have been told, and you know, like I said, I work with Tom Witt in politics all the time. I have been told from Kansas congressmen, from Kansas senators when I've been inside the Capitol that we're going to hell. And I'm like, you are the lawmakers of this state, and I'm paying your salary. If I'm going to hell, you're surely going with me.
Yeah, you know, every time I hear it too, I just think, cool, that's going to be a hell of a party because we're all going to be down there. We all know each other.
Everyone's going to be dressed fabulously. The food's going to be on beautiful trays. It's going to be excellent. No, probably the first time I ever experienced real, genuine hate from the community. I just bought my home, you know, and I didn't know who my district representative was at the time. I really didn't, and I'm not speaking ill of anybody. And so there's an election year, and I am very active in my community. Oh, yes. And Jan Paul's husband comes to my door, and I did not know their stance on gay rights. So I start speaking, and I'm like, yeah, and here comes my wife, my black wife. And when she comes up to the door and she's wanting to shake hands, and he literally stops dead in his tracks. And I had never seen that kind of hate in my life. I had never been like literally, the biggest compliment I've ever gotten is people see me and my wife, they're like, we don't even realize you're gay. That's cool. I gotta just say it. That is the most amazing compliment to get, is they're like, we never look at you as a gay couple. And he literally stops. He looks us up and down. He flips and he walks away. And this is my district, this is from my district leader. And it dawns on me, the person representing my rights, the person representing where I live, loathes me. And then I bought the house next door just 'cause, and put my gay daughter in it. Sure did. So there you go.
Okay, let's go back to talking about coming out.
Ew.
And
It's a,
well, I want to talk a little bit more about Connor. When you came out, who was the first person that you told?
My sister, my stepsister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about, when did you tell your parents?
I told her around, I think it was 2014 or 2015, and my parents, it would have had to been like maybe a year or two ago.
oh wow, good for you, seriously.
Good. Is everything going well?
It's going really good.
Has it been
Yeah.
positive?
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Good.
Did that shock you? Did it went as well as it did?
Yeah. I thought it was gonna be horrible, honestly. I don't know why, but I was just
I think
scared.
we all feel, a lot of us feel that way.
It's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah, very scary time.
Well, you know, and I don't feel like, I think I've always felt like I was out.
I
know what
feel
I
I
mean?
feel that same way. As well.
I don't, as far as my biological and even my adopted family, my biological family, I have a brother that is trans. I had an uncle on both sides of that family that was gay. I had an uncle that had 3 daughters that were all lesbian. The gay part was not the problems I grew up with in my
Right.
biological family. In my adopted family, I had my adopted brother was 2 years older than me, and he was gay, and they knew, and
Right.
you know, so
Glenn?
I've just always been fortunate to be able to just be myself.
Right. Speaking of siblings and family, I know you have a story to tell as far as family goes.
First, I want to back up because when I told my mother, well, I didn't exactly tell her. I brought someone home from school, and we were going to go to the bars. I lived in the Kansas City area, so we were going to go to the bars. And my mom wanted to know where I met this guy, and I said, well, I met him in a bar. And she said, well, can I go with you? Because she wasn't more interested in me, she wanted to go drink. So I said, well, I don't see why not.
And you didn't warn her?
No.
That's
So
excellent.
we went to the bars in Kansas City, and she looked around, she goes, where are the women? I said, well, they're downstairs. They have a separate area. And she goes, oh. And then she said, well, is this a gay bar? I go, yes, it is. Are you gay? I go, yes, I am. Then she goes, is your sister gay? And I said, I think you should ask her that. I knew the answer, but she needed to ask her. But I've looking at my whole family, I know that my mother had an uncle that was gay. I know that, well, I have a sister that's gay. I have a niece and a nephew that is gay, and I have two great, I don't know what they're called, she's my niece, so her kids might be my
Your great niece.
great nephews, two great nephews that are gay. So it's something that can't be changed. It is DNA.
Must have been in the water in your community, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so has anyone found out your orientation or gender identity before you wanted them to know? That's to anybody.
Well, I mean, even just recently, like, I work at the college, and I was at a employee meeting, and we're all sitting around the table, and my wife also works there, and she was sitting next to me, and someone who knew that we were going to get married said, oh, well, they're getting married. And the rest of the table didn't know. And so they're like, really? And then it was like, are you doing that in Hutchinson? Because I think we voted against that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're doing it right here in Hutchinson. But when we were talking about coming out, there's one thing I wanted to say, and I've had my coming out a couple of times. The one thing I wished for my kids, and it is for the most part true, is not that they were able to come out, is that they would come into their sexuality or their gender identification and it not be an issue that they have to
Right.
come out of.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So when she came to me and said, hey Mom, I'm pansexual, first of all, I'm pretty old school when it comes to the labels, and so I was like, okay, what's that mean?
You know, Google, didn't ya?
Yeah, I had to Google a little bit, but it's okay, because it doesn't matter. I still love her.
Thank you, Mom.
You're affirmed, Allie, you know.
No, I never felt pressured or anything like that. Like, coming out wasn't really coming out for me. Like you said, it was coming into it. My parents, my stepmother as well, they both were very accepting. My entire family was very accepting. So it wasn't like me coming out and like voicing like I'm different than you guys. It was me coming into it and being like, I'm coming into myself and I know you guys will accept me for it.
Well, and we always kind of
We kind of
always knew, sweetheart.
Yeah.
We always kind of knew.
Go ahead.
My problem is when I came out in the newspaper, I didn't realize my aunt took the newspaper. And
I'm just waiting for that day when, you know, like she was saying, you don't have to come out. It's not a big deal. I'm waiting for that day where it's almost so weird for somebody to come out. It'd be like somebody going up to, you know, a guy going up to his dad and going, Dad, I'm sorry I have to tell you, but I like girls. Now that should sound weird. So, you know, that's what I want for the LGBT community. Is it just to sound weird for a kid to come out and tell their parents, you know, that they like the opposite sex or they identify as transgender.
Yeah, because really
No.
all I got from my mom was when I told her was, what's that? And that's it. That's the only thing I got from it was questioning about how, like, what it was. Not
Right.
like, really?
I didn't have a choice but to come out. I literally got outed by my wife. She gave me an ultimatum. We had been dating for a long period of time, and she said, you come out or I'm going to come out for you. So I called my mother, who worked at Prairie Dunes as a supervisor for many, many years, and I took her over and met my mother, and I told her she was my friend. And then I called my mother at work, and I said, you know that black, lovely lady I brought to your house? She said, yes. I said, I'm dating her. I want you to control that. While she's at work, I did this. I said, and call me when you can deal. And I hung up, and I didn't call her back for like a month. And that's how I came out.
I think the only times that I've been outed, not of my choice, I don't, and I'm sure a lot of people on this panel have experienced this, is when you decide to go to bat and do something like the pageant system that I'm running and everything that I'm doing, starting up this new initiative and project that I'm doing. Newspapers, magazines,
Yeah.
interviews. And it begins to go like, oh, well, this is Evan Shaheen, and by the way, he's gay.
And you're
Before I've
defined.
ever met them, before I've ever met this person.
I know Channel 12 by dialect.
Channel 12, the Wichita Eagle, all of them, they go, well, you're the gay person that we talked to, right? I guess so. So it's kind of one of those things where, yes, I've been forcibly outed, but it's kind of comes with the territory.
Thanks for all those were great stories, great comments. Has anybody ever brought up the fact that you might have been sexually abused and then turned out this way?
It's the first thing they go to. No, it really is the first thing they go to. They're like, when I was having issues in school, the depression was there, and I'm sure Toby's been through it. I'm sure we've all heard it. Well, you must only reject men because you were molested or raped by a man.
How many have experienced that or heard that from family, friends,
Family,
Therapists.
therapists.
Can I
Your therapist
can I do
was
something?
totally
Yeah.
cool.
I want to just disprove the fact that transgender people, gay people, lesbians are that way because of abuse. Okay, can I do that? How many people out here have been sexually abused, beaten, abused, in any way? Raise your hand.
Did it make you gay?
Okay, keep your hands up if you're gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual. Look how my hands went down. Abuse, assault, rape, all of this, it's a national,
Crisis.
it's a tragedy, is what it is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect one type of person. It affects every single demographic out there. Color, race, orientation, it doesn't matter what you are, it affects everybody.
And I think when they use that to define us and say that we are gay or we are transgendered, because of that, not only does
It's a
it...
red herring argument
Yes,
is what it is.
and
It's
not
a false
only-
equivalent.
Yes, and not only does it take away from the seriousness of the rape and sexual misconduct that actually happens on a daily basis to every single human being, but it also berates who we are as individuals, who we were born as individuals.
Yeah, I mean, when you never have I experienced, it's like I said, I do a lot of stuff with Tom Whitten in Topeka, and even on a national level, when you hear Republican senators especially say
Now,
this
don't get
argument
political.
of, well, you're this way because something happened in your childhood, that not only does it minimize the fight for equal rights, but it also minimizes the fights that you have to have when you have been abused or raped or
Exactly.
whatever, and you're Now you're telling two groups of people that they don't matter because one must equal the other.
They become marginalized.
Right, and it's so wrong on so many levels. It's just horrible.
Moving on here. Have you ever self-medicated to deal with who you are when you first started coming out? When you were struggling with who you were?
Yeah.
Toby?
I cut for 5 years. I was an alcoholic for those 5 years as well. I was 15.
Oh my God.
I was already medicated, so
What do you mean by that?
I was put on prescribed medications as a young child, so I didn't self-medicate in that way, no. I did cut as well, though, so I guess you could say that was a self-medication.
The only thing I could control was what I ate, so I developed an eating disorder. Anorexia and bulimia became my control factor.
Lorette, you raised your hand?
Yeah. I fast from NyQuil most of the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How many of you feel the need to hide who you are with a healthcare professional? You don't want to get into it with them. Anybody?
With who?
Healthcare.
Healthcare professionals.
Doctors.
My doctor's gay.
Not me, not me. Every doctor I go to knows it.
I've never hit it, but I had a doctor, well, I had the PA, and the PA and I were friendly, and, you know, I had some issues, and she wanted to prescribe a certain medication, but it had to get certified through the actual doctor because of the side effects of this medication, and you had to be not any chance of having children. And she goes, well, I already have you on birth control. You've had your tubes tied, and you're a lesbian, so essentially you're abstinent when it comes to the possibility of getting pregnant. And the doctor said, yeah, but that doesn't count. She can always change her mind. And refused to sign off on the medication, and I was like, whatever.
Let me guess, it's a phase.
Yeah, and, well, I might change my mind, you know.
It's a phase.
My doctor is a married lesbian, so.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that I do through WITCON, we are an educational 501c3. So about 3 years, or 4 times a year, I will sit on a panel, a lot like this, over at KU Med. I've done it at Wesley Hospital, stuff like that, and talk about health issues with doctors and students that are going to KU. And one of the things I talk about is the trans health issues, stuff like that. But it's not just medication. Trans health issues starts as soon as you walk in the door. You go to administration and they ask you for your information, and immediately they start using your birth name. They start misgendering you, stuff like that. Or you've been there before and they still haven't changed your records, stuff like that. So I had an experience one time when I first came out and ended up having to go to the doctor, and that's exactly what it was like. And sitting there in the waiting room and having them calling out your old name, which just didn't look appropriate for the way I was dressed. And then just recently, I was hit by a bus on October 13th, Friday the 13th. I survived it.
Wow.
And I was in the hospital in the emergency room, and things have changed in Wichita. The language of transgender is changing in Wichita and in healthcare. Because when they were talking to me, immediately they were mamming me and everything like that. And I explained to them that I was transgender. But the nurse was so on point with my gender identification, she was still asking me when the last time I had my period, how many kids have I given birth to, stuff like this. 3 years ago, that didn't happen in Wichita.
So you're seeing positive changes.
Oh, definitely. It's
Right.
slowly, at least in specific healthcare facilities in Wichita, where
Right.
we've been able to get in touch with them, yes, it is changing big time.
I got a call just a couple weeks ago, actually, from the Hutch Clinic. They called and asked me, they had a transgender patient, and they wanted to know how to address this person and how to so locally, we're starting to see people
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
So that's very positive.
And times are really changing. Again, it takes things like WitCon, it takes things like, initiatives that I'm trying to build up. Getting in there and teaching people
Yes.
and it's not just in the major cities, because in Wichita, again, things are changing.
It's a melting pot.
I know working through Harry Hines Hospice, Via Christi and Wesley are always having, whether they bring in a third party or whether they have somebody on staff do it themselves, some kind of cultural competency training that goes on, because they realize that if you're going to really get hormones, get all this other stuff, there's not so many places. You have to go to Kansas City or Wichita or a major metro area to get that done. And you're going to see these patients, so they realize that they have to do this. And I've also begun finding out, while building all of these databases and everything, that younger doctors in the rural areas are beginning to understand that this is something that they're going to encounter, because you go to med school, whether it be through KU or what have you, and they're teaching this stuff now. It's one of these things where you have to understand that different people are going to walk through your door, and they're actually including on medical forms, because unfortunately with Medicare, Medicaid, insurance, you can't get away from your birth sex. But you can include on forms what gender you would like to be called and the name that you are preferring to use. And they're starting to add these things onto forms in hospitals, in clinics. Medicare, Medicaid is coming out with options for this.
But I will say, the one thing I will say, and I think is important, is that for me as a lesbian, and I think Jan, is that we saw the change a lot longer ago than the transgender community had. My wife and I...
The transgender community is unfortunately way behind
Yes.
the rest of the community, and that's in part of our own doing.
My wife and I went to Wichita, the Center for Reproductive Medicine, 16 years ago, and got pregnant. And they treated us wonderfully. So, I mean, the important thing is to keep the discussion going and keep it moving along.
I need to say real fast, I know we have a lot of people, just by raise of hands, anybody have questions already?
You got one up here?
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for 2 or 3 quick questions, and then we're gonna move ahead, because this could go on forever, and that is awesome. But we've had to skip a lot of questions already. So, yes.
My question was with respect to the parents here, or I guess it doesn't have to be parents. It can be from your own experiences, because everybody was a child once. So I have an 8-month-old baby, and I want to make sure that as a parent, I raise him in a way that he feels absolutely free to come into himself. From your experiences, either as a parent or growing up through your families, what would be your advice and the best way to do that?
Love your child for who exactly they are.
I know that they're going to get a lot of language just in their environment, and already does. It's, we get comments of, oh, look, he's flirting with her because he smiles at a girl. He smiles at anyone who smiles at him. He's a baby. And, he's going to be a heartbreaker. You better watch out for those other girls and things like that. And I want him it's going to be a lot of cultural influence for him to know. And I want him to know that he won't ever have to battle that with us.
As a mother of 6 and a foster of 5 that takes in multiple types of children, and by that I mean multiply sexual children, trans, fluid, gay, bi. You are your child's biggest advocate. You are the one that will fight for your child. You are the one that will mold your child. And the one thing I can tell you, and I swear it will work, is you remember you above anything, your love, your tolerance, your acceptance, and your teaching, above all, will teach that child how to love. If you don't allow somebody else to overtake that, that's what's going to mold your child.
I would say, at least because the way that my mom raised me, is that we have a very open line of
Yes.
communication. And that was the biggest thing for me, because I knew I could go to my mom for anything, about anything, and talk to her about anything. And that was the biggest thing.
And she's been that way since the beginning. There were times that I remember it was Easter, and we go and get a nice outfit for Easter, because we're going to have it with the family, and we're going to have a big Easter egg hunt. And yeah, I'm going to tell this story. So Allie says, okay, Mom, but I don't want a dress. I said, okay.
She didn't wear a dress either.
I said, what do you want to wear? She says, okay, I want pants and a shirt.
Like her cousins.
Like her cousins. And so Allie had a little sweater vest and a button-down shirt and her slacks, and her hair was short at the time. And
Allow them to be who they are. Always encourage them to express themselves.
And when people asked her, well, why do you want to wear pants today? Because you can't play on the swing set in your dress.
Yeah, I was very big on that.
So
I wanted to feel like her wife, basically. Her wife was my biggest role model at that age.
Yeah,
and
my wife is kind of like the father figure
Yes,
for
she
all
was,
the kids.
definitely.
And this is my niece, by the way. And she was like Gina's mini-me. And we knew very early on with Allie, and Allie was very much that kid.
she was allowed to do whatever she wanted to do as far as that went.
We need to move on to another question. If you can speak to the panel afterward.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I just have a quick question. And this is just basically my thoughts. Is a person wrong if they don't see eye to eye with your views? And if so, do you view them as the enemy?
Again, like I've stressed a lot of times, I'm probably one of the more political people.
Yeah, you are.
And I always tell people it's not your views. If you have different views than I do, great. We live in a democracy. We have freedom of speech. The only time it becomes a problem is when either I try to force my views on you or you try to force your views onto me. If we have that mutual respect and open communication and exchange of ideas, great. Unfortunately, a lot of times those get shut down. So as long as I can communicate freely with you, my ideals, and you can communicate freely with me, I don't see anybody as an enemy. I have very liberal friends, I have very conservative friends. That just kind of goes with the territory.
How many of you have friends who do not see eye to eye with you and you're still close friends with them?
I have to say that's an amazing question, and I'm going to tell you why, especially in the heated atmosphere we have right now. Because I'm a card-carrying member of the NAACP, and I believe in equality across the board. I said that earlier, which means I would march to make sure you have the right to believe as you do. Whatever religion you are, whatever race, creed, nationality, whatever sexual orientation you are, I will fight for your right to be that. You do not have to agree with me. Just the only thing I ask is do not use your beliefs to take away my rights.
Right.
And I will do the same with you. It is a mutual respect across the board. That is all I ask, and I love the fact that you asked that question.
It probably won't shock you, that's my son.
I kind of caught up with the baby.
To follow up on that question, I'm in the United States military. I have friends who different religions, different.
Ex-Marine.
Oh, thank you. But I think like a lot of us who are, I guess, straight. Sorry.
Define straight.
Well, this is my fiance.
That is my husband.
Well, you said there, like, you guys wanted educational programs for us to understand, like, these new sexualities are coming out.
Sure.
But however, I'm a very strong conservative. But however, I'm seeing videos, and I'm also hearing from other people who are under like the I'm sorry, I struggle with acting.
LGBTQ+.
Yes.
I struggled too.
And to them, it feels like we're, in those videos, they're getting mad at us because we don't share those same beliefs. Is it possible that, is there some way there can be an educational system for your guys' followers?
Oh my gosh, amazing question. Let me tell you what those videos are. They're divisive and they're wrong. First of all,
What videos are we talking about?
well,
I don't-
any video that feeds divisiveness is wrong. Okay, first of all, you are entitled to your beliefs, your religion, and your stance on how you view things. Okay, my stance is very easy, and I'm going to put it in. Since you brought up the fact that you're military, any one of us that signed on that dotted line, we agreed to protect this nation and everyone in it equally. Correct? That is my stance. I don't care how you believe, as long as you strive to protect everyone equally. I would do the same for you. I don't care what your stance is. I don't care that you agree with me, as long as we have a mutual respect and opening. Any video that feeds divisiveness and hate towards one another, whether it's LGBTQ or race dividing or white, it doesn't matter who's making it, it's wrong. The last thing we need in this nation or on this panel or in this forum is more divisiveness. And I think anyone that fights in that panel would agree with
And
that.
I just want to say, and I'm sorry if I'm,
It's good. No,
we have to understand that those videos, whatever medium that they happen to be on, YouTube, the news, whatever, they're just that, they're videos.
exactly.
They are people's opinions being put out into this world that don't necessarily reflect the community as a whole.
The majority.
So what I would say to that is there's work to be done on both ends, but always come talk to us. And I think one of the biggest problems that we have, whether it be through videos, blog posts, whatever, is that people aren't educating themselves. One of the biggest things that I saw, especially in the 2016 election, was that people weren't educating themselves on how the system actually works, and they weren't educating themselves on the issues. So they were just voting strictly along party lines, whether they had a D, R, or an I behind them. If you educate yourself on the issues, on what's going on, I think that allows more of the free-flowing to happen.
Let me ask you a question, just to elaborate. On the videos where there are LGBT being beaten and then they're uploaded on YouTube, on the videos where trans people are being kicked and beaten and then they take videos and they put it up on YouTube, should I hold you accountable? Should I say that you believe that way? That you need to open your eyes? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's them being divisive. That's not you, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
Yeah,
Let's
get it.
We'll make that the last thing on this particular question.
I am who I am. I can't be anything else but me.
Right.
And I consider myself normal. And it doesn't matter.
Any of us really normal.
Well, see, that's where we all feel like we're normal as we are.
Right.
So when you state you're a heterosexual, I can't understand that because I'm the normal one. See what I mean? When I was younger, I looked at people like you and thought, I'm the normal one, he's the abnormal one. How could he have sex with a woman? That's gross. See where I'm coming from? See where I'm coming from? This was me. This is me. And I've had to learn to adapt and accept that there's heterosexual people out there. I mean, because I thought God made me this way and I still feel He did, so I feel like I'm the normal one.
Thank you,
I
Christopher.
can't
You are
go
quite
any
normal.
other way.
You're quite normal.
So-
Are there any other questions before we move on? Nothing's just, you're not going to pee your pants if you don't get asked. Okay, we'll get to that again later then, and get the camera off of me. Okay.
Too late. Okay, this is for Lorette. Do you feel, or do you think there are different levels of being transgender?
Of course. There's gender queer, gender fluid. Somebody might feel male sometimes and some feel woman some other times.
What do you think?
I agree. Like, there's days where I feel incredibly feminine. It doesn't change the fact that I still consider myself a trans male, or that, you know, and certain people, you know, you're not defined by your genitalia. You are defined of what you find to be your true self and what you put out in that world. And everybody's got, you know, different levels of everything that they're comfortable with and what they want to be and what they want to achieve.
Do you plan to fully transition?
I do not. For female to male, there's a lot more, I mean, there's risks any way you look at it. There's, you know, with surgery. For me, I just want top surgery. I don't feel like the medical community has progressed in a way to where I would want anything more.
So, but if they did, would you?
Eventually, maybe, yes.
Can I add?
Go ahead.
Vincent Grant. When you say levels, what they're actually talking about is where they are on the spectrum. You have, most people think of the spectrum as being binary. You have either male or female. So everybody thinks that a transgender person, a male to female transgender person, goes all the way to the other end of the spectrum. That's not necessarily true. There are male to female transgender people that still hold a lot of masculine qualities. You have non-binary people who don't always identify one side or the other, or even any. There are asexual people, or
Gender fluid.
gender.
Agender.
Agender.
Yeah, and those are people that just never feel male or female. There's all different kinds. Your spectrum is really wide, and just like people who are white, you have some people that have blonde hair, you have some that are brunettes, you have some redheads, you have some with green eyes, brown eyes, blue eyes. They're all different on the spectrum of what a white person is supposed to look like, right? So that's what the male and female or gender spectrum is. You have extremes on each end and people all over in between.
Brenda, can you ever feel complete without sexual reassignment surgery?
This is really difficult for me subject because
And you don't have to answer.
I've learned to accept my body. I've always hated what was down there, especially after starting my transition. When you decide to go in and medically transition using medication, the first thing they do is they draw blood from you and they check where your hormone levels are. And mine were really out of whack, and they checked back in my medical history. My mom had kept all of it. They noticed something that was kind of weird when I was around 12, 13 years old. But what they were looking for is why did this person have such high estrogen levels and such low testosterone levels? Well, when they went all the way back to the beginning, they found out that I was born intersex. I was born with ambiguous genitalia. I have one ovary, and I create estrogen. But at a year old, because being intersex or being deformed or anything that they thought back then was such a taboo subject. They didn't talk about it. They immediately do surgery on the child. They pick a gender that they have the most of their genitals of. I had the full male reproductive system, and I had a vaginal opening and an ovary. So they just closed up all the female parts and left me what I grew up with. At the age of 12, 13 years old, what made them wonder what was going on, I was being pumped full of testosterone because I started developing breasts, and they wanted to stop that process. So I was on testosterone all the way through my teen years. I didn't even know what it was. I did not find out that I was born intersex until I went and got my labs done to start transitioning. Do I want to keep it? No, but I'm a realist. I know that I will never be able to come up with $27,000 to have that surgery. If I do anything, I would love to get an augmentation, because now on my hormones I can't grow them because of all the testosterone they fed me. I'll learn to live with what I've got. That's about the best I can do.
Evan, real quick. Go ahead.
And just kind of speaking, because I've worked with Medicare, Medicaid, and a lot of different insurances through Harry Hines Hospice, the kind of surgeries that Brenda's talking about, they are covered under surgery, under procedures, if you are a cisgendered woman or a cisgendered man needing this because something has happened to you medically. Mm-hmm. The instant you start transitioning, they consider it cosmetic surgery.
Yep.
And Medicare, Medicaid, and no major insurer will pay for you to have these surgeries unless you can pay the entire sum yourself. For some insurances, again, this is not all of them, some insurances will reimburse you for top surgery, but you have to pay anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 yourself to the doctor. And the reality is, most trans people, I would like to see anybody in this room be able to fork over $10,000 up front right there for a surgery and hope that your insurance company is going to be able or will pay you back. And the sad part of it is a lot of insurance companies, you fork over, the average is what, $5,000 for a breast augmentation? And they will maybe reimburse you $3,000. So you're out $2,000. Medicare, Medicaid won't cover it at all if it's cosmetic surgeries.
And I think what's really getting to me right this second is so many people think that being transgendered is a choice, which is something I've become a huge advocate for. It's not a choice.
No.
Nobody chooses what she went through. Her parents got to choose which sex she was going to be. But to leave her, to watch her, to decide, to let her be who she was going to be, and then let her have the sex, decide which sex she was going to be when the hormones kicked in. Look at the hell she would have gone through as a child. Look what would have happened to her in junior high or high school. But they got to decide, and her body went somewhere else.
Yeah.
These surgeries should be covered.
I need to interject in there because, you know what? If they had just left me alone, sure, I'd have been different. I probably would have gotten teased for that. I probably would have gotten beaten up for that. But
you could have decided.
I could have been happy with what I had. I will never ever find out if I could have been happy just being who I am. I had to go through a transition Where if I could have kept that body part, I seriously think because of my mannerisms, I'd have just said I'm a girl and lived as a girl. But I had to go through 49 years of hell, suicide attempts, bullying, getting rejected by
Both sexes.
potential dates, and it was hell. My advice is leave people's bodies alone. And I'm even talking about circumcision. Did you know because I was circumcised, if I ever do get the chance to have that surgery, they have less material to work with.
And one thing,
Wait, I'm sorry, we have to keep moving. We are so close to the library closing on us.
Oh,
Okay, so we have about 3 more questions left, and then this lady has a question, and then if you want to mill around afterwards and talk, we'll go with that. Are there any children in the audience or up here whose parents were part of the LGBTQ+, and how did that affect you? Were you bullied because of your parents?
I wouldn't say bullied per se, but I do remember in middle school that people often assumed I was a lesbian because my parent was a lesbian. And that was the most that I got. They assumed my sexuality before I knew myself what my sexuality was. And if anything, it pushed me further back in finding my own self because they were assuming something about me that I didn't know yet. But sorry, I got distracted. Having my mom as an LGBTQ person, it helped me not really care about what they were thinking about me because I knew my mom was a strong person, who she was. So it didn't matter that they thought that I was lesbian because if I was lesbian, then that meant I was as strong as my mom.
Well, Glenn, what about your kids? Any issues at all?
Which children? The ones I have?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. One day I was in the office and I got a phone call from my oldest son and he said, could you meet me at Kmart? I said, why? Well, I need to get some things because I'm doing landscaping for someone down the street and I want you to kind of use that gay thing, you know, where you can put colors together.
Thank you.
All right. Brenda, what would you like the world to know about you?
What do I what?
What would you like the world to know about you?
That I have a big heart.
Okay.
I learned through hate how to love people again.
Okay. Janelle, what would you like the world to know about you?
That I'm just like everyone else.
Allie, what would you like the world to know about you?
That I care a lot about everything and everyone in this world.
Christopher, what would you like the world to know about you?
They already know it.
You don't hide anything, Christopher.
I am just myself, and I'm happy with myself, and if somebody's not happy with me, it doesn't bother me. I don't not sleep at night.
I'd like the world to know that Christopher is normal. Connor, what would you like the world to know about you?
That even though people do hate, you shouldn't let it get to you, and I want people to know that I don't let it get to me. That I'm still going to be my authentic self.
Julia, what do you want the world to know about you?
I will be an activist for each one of you. I will fight till my dying day to make sure that each one of you, no matter who you are, what you represent, have equality. And I will fight.
no.
No, go ahead. We'll stop there.
That what I am as a gay male is only part of who I am. And like we were talking about earlier, open the lines of communication up and you will get to know so much more about me, and I might turn out to be one of the best people you know. But you have to look past what you think I am.
Okay. Toby, what do you want the world to know about you?
Everybody's just so good on this tonight.
This could be the hardest question.
That despite every time I've been kicked down by anything or anyone, I will continue to fight for the little guy, for those that have been kicked down there with me, and that I'm here, and I want to be a presence to help others to understand and to feel love when there may be none.
Laurette, what do you want the world to know about you?
That I'm a valuable human being with a big heart.
Glenn, what do you want the world to know about you?
I'm genuinely a good person.
John, would you like to answer this question as well? You've not answered most of the questions.
I think you should
I think that
answer.
was strategic, don't you?
Yeah, yeah,
Yes. Because we all know John's got things to say.
Too much to say.
No.
Just like Julia, just like everybody out there, you know. I want to fight for everyone, and I'm tired of the inequality, and I want to move more toward equality, and it seems to be getting harder and harder. There's still work to do, and we all have to work together to make it happen.
Okay. I would like to thank all of our panelists for coming. I truly appreciate this. Not just because I think I'm going to get an A, but because I really do appreciate you putting yourself out there and giving of yourself, because that is what you did today. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here and listening, because I think that is how we are going to learn to deal with diversity in our community, is these conversations. And so, again, thank you so very much. You had a question, ma'am.
I just had a question on the transgender transitioning, and we know in the news that at the federal level, in the federal prison, that there have been prisoners that have been given that choice and have been given that to go through the transition. So my question is, and maybe you can't answer it because I can't answer it, is why someone out in the everyday world that has done their due diligence, they've worked and, you know, been a regular person out in the community, why are they not afforded something that they need for their life?
I think again it goes back to the insurance companies. And there's a whole lot that's wrapped up when you talk about insurances and you talk about these kind of surgeries. There's a whole lot of politics wrapped up in that.
Yes.
The reason that people in federal prisons can afford it is because the federal government mandates it. Plain and simple.
It's the same with transitioning in the military too.
Right.
Because it's federal government.
It's a federal government thing. Private citizens like you or I, we don't get those benefits because we have to have private insurance, which, as I think everybody knows in this room, is still a huge battle. We're still battling over what universal insurance actually looks like. And until we get the insurance companies and the politics and the laws in line with that federal mandate, we'll never have that. And that is a huge uphill battle, because every time you have a healthcare debate, you have healthcare lobbyists in that debate. And they are some of the biggest, meanest people on the block because they want to get paid. And let me just give you an example here. When I go to get an MRI, I recently, a few years ago, had sinus surgery to drain all of my sinuses out. In Canada, that procedure, which is covered under their universal healthcare system, is maybe $1,000. And the federal government pays for that if I absolutely needed it, which it was deemed that I did. In the United States, all of the testing and the procedure itself equaled out to be $60,000, of which I had to pay $4,000. The tests are the same. It costs the same amount of money. The equipment costs the same. The problem is, in the United States, we mark up all of the prices so that the insurance companies make a profit. And until we start looking at different ways to do this, the surgeries that trans people need, it's gonna be an uphill battle.
But
And it sucks.
But be careful, because there are military people that are not being afforded these surgeries right now.
That's very true.
You know, the sad thing is I'm very well aware of multiple people that have come out of the military, and while we're paying $84 million a year for Viagra, and only $6 million, we are, literally, that's a
We
fact.
are.
And we're
If you
paying
look on the
six-
military budget, it's
Yes,
right
and we're
there.
paying $6 million, approximately $6 million for hormones. And 99.9% of these people do not have transition till after they get out of the military. And they should have coverage for life. They are still fighting to get those surgeries that they so desperately need, even after they have fought to protect this country.
The Supreme Court in middle of 1970s ruled that inmates were entitled to medical
Yes.
care.
Yep.
So that's why they get medical, transitional care.
A murderer gets better care than you do.
Yeah.
True.
It's not just the insurances either. I think a lot of it has to do with the doctors and stuff. I went to go and get estimates on getting top surgery, getting augmentation. But I went with a cisgender woman. Cisgender, by the way, is anybody who's not trans. Cisgender woman that had the same build as I did, and they wanted to charge me up to $1,500 more for my surgery because I'm trans.
It's true.
Same thing.
Conversations, but we're gonna wrap it up, so you'll need to have them one-on-one in person. Again,
We need to head out, because
we do need to head out. They are closing the library. Thank you so much for coming. I hope to have another one of these in about 6 months. Thank you, all of you. If you have any ideas for another diversity topic, please get hold of me. Thank you.